The Parti Keadilan Rakyat or PKR recently had its Deputy President elections. Congratulations to Nurul Izzah for winning the Deputy Presidency, moving Malaysia one step closer to being Malaysia Madani or Malaysia Mama, Daddy dan Nurul Izzah. Jokes aside though, there's no room for sore losers in this country.
So when you consider Saudara Rafizi,
I mean, he didn't shake Anwar's hand properly when he went for the Congress on the day the results were announced. He didn't show up the following day either, but I find it fascinating, by the way, because our friend is casually talking about how now he's gonna be a lot more free to just say whatever he wants rather than having to play to the political sandiwaras along the way. But you know, looking at the numbers from this election and trying to do a post-mortem, I have so many questions you have no idea. Sepupus, here's a summary of the results that we got from the elections. These were numbers released by Dr. Zaliha, who was responding to this idea that maybe there were hidden hands throughout this entire election. Lots of drama, scandals, 289 reports of sketchy behavior at a divisional level, a full-on audit of vendors. It was free, it was fair, it was amazing. But then when you start looking at the numbers, you realize that there's something very wrong. According to Dr. Zaliha, 32,021 people were eligible to vote. These are the people who were selected through the first divisional polls. They say 18,268 votes were received, 12,618 online, 5,650 physical, and a 57.05% voting rate. For the MPP, which is basically like the legit council, basically there were 22,081 delegates that were eligible to vote for this. 13,752 people came out to vote. 8,329 people did not vote. For Deputy President, 13,669 out of 13,752 votes were received. The difference, implying the abstention, was 83 votes in total. Alright, so first of all, why was there such a low turnout? Now, Dr. Zaliha says that, oh, come on now. There was a 57% turnout. That's pretty good. It's good for your standard issue organizational elections. But there's a problem there for a few different reasons. First of all, even that number is already extremely low. There are
1,153,212 members of PKR.
And the very fact that 32,021 delegates were eligible to vote at all showcases that the entire election was basically determined by
2.78%
of PKR's total membership, which is like... There's also this concept of a quorum, by the way. So a quorum is like a certain minimum percentage who must actually be present in order for an election result to count. I don't know if PKR even has something like that, because if it does, it doesn't show that at all. I think you realize that that's because of the new delegate system that PKR introduced when it amended its constitution in December 2024, aiming to achieve proportional representation. What happens is that the delegates, or the people who make up the 32,021, are actually selected by the people who won the divisional elections, which is like nice, but if you are one of the 32,021 people who were eligible to vote in the entire election, then that means that you were selected from the entire pool of members specifically for the purpose of voting.
So why did they not vote?
Working day or not, I find it very weird that what happened.
Because remember, right, people could actually vote from the comfort of their own homes literally by just logging in.
You can literally just count the online voting rate, which is basically just 12,618 votes online. Compare that to 32,021 minus 5,650, and you only get a
47.87% voting rate.
Which I think is very interesting, because if you think about it, should that really be the case? This is not just a regular election. Sepupus, it was a big contest and it's the party of the Prime Minister. If you're going to decide exactly what the future of the party is going to be, like, I don't see a reason why you would just not vote. First time in 3 years, new technology, blockchain voting, GovTech Asia, case study, innovative.
With high levels of engagement, despite the fact that 1 in 2 people did not vote.
Is it really that hard to go online in order to vote in the first place? In fact, if you look at the people who were able to vote for the MPP, otherwise known as the Central Leadership Council, 13,752 votes out of 22,081 qualified voters is literally only 62.2% overall. So you're telling me that, like, from this very small and selected group, you still have 37%
of
that select population that chose not to vote at all. So how do y'all even do the selection process in the first place? Like, did these people not care about the vote? Were they unable to vote? Did they not want to vote for certain reasons which we have yet to talk about? Well,
But let's suppose these people could not vote. Maybe they're like Viviana Mosibin, can't get online or something. But if that's the case, then why choose those members? And what if they weren't coordinated, informed, or taught how to vote?
that tells me a couple of things, right? Like, A, these people just aren't online savvy and they just don't know how to actually do the process. The members of PKR are just not aware. The leaders are not competent. They couldn't actually teach their members how to log in the first place. Maybe they forgot to vote and they forgot the date. If so, then I have to wonder, right? Like, why were the leaders of PKR not able to encourage their members to actually vote when it comes to an election as important as this that determines the entire future of the party? Because if that's what happened, it doesn't really reflect very well on the party as a whole. Anyway, next question. Is the election actually a fair reflection of the party's will? So you see, right, like if you look at Nurul Izzah's total number of votes, it's 9,803, which is only 44.4% of the total valid votes from the Majlis Pimpinan Pusat voters. So if you think about it, right, there's an open question here, right? Do people even want her to be president? Now we know that there were 8,329 tidak mengundi, which is not the same as abstention in the sense that these people could have voted for Timbalan president, but then they chose not to. Like we can see from Dr. Zaliha's numbers that basically there were 83 people who were like that. But these were literally people who just chose not to vote, even though they were the people who were actually chosen to vote in the MPP elections. Isn't that weird? Because that's like 37.7% of the entire valid votes. If you don't think that's sus, like, I think it's sus right here. Because like, the majority between Nurul Izzah and Rafizi was literally only about 6,000. So then if every single one of those people who did not vote at all, right, so they had voted for Rafizi instead, then in that case, then Rafizi would have won. Would they have? We'll never know because they just didn't vote. In the first place, right, the divisional elections and the body without head thing means that delegates, right, that would have arguably favored Nurul Izzah would have already been chosen. But then you're telling me, right, that somehow or another, even those people didn't want to vote when it came to the election? Like, what is this? Now, my last question for now is a very important one, and I think it's definitely relevant to the overall result. And that is, did the party leadership, right, have access to information about who voted for who? Now, you might think to yourself that this is not very important, but it really is. Because at the end of the day, right, you must understand that one of the reasons why votes are kept secret and why it's such a significant issue in modern elections, if this were a general election and not just a party election, right, if the ruling government knew who you were voting for and what your identity is, then they can actually bring about repercussions to you. Meaning that, like, if they find out, right, that you didn't vote for them, then they can actually, like, make life difficult for you, make you suffer, I don't know, like, choose not to fund your constituency or anything like that. But in a party election like this, right, so like, just imagine this. The party is led by the Prime Minister as the president of the party, and you vote against him, right, then you can say bye-bye to any chance that you can ever advance in the party ever again.
Now, I'm not accusing PKR, but if there's no mechanism against this, then yeah.
When you have a situation where there's this suspicion that there's nepotism involved, and if you go against Nurul Izzah, then you're basically going against the Prime Minister. You can imagine how people might feel if they knew that their vote was actually being observed by people. So are we saying straight away that the Prime Minister and also PKR didn't know who was in charge of voting? We have a couple of reasons to think that maybe the party actually knew. Because like, in order for you to actually get your vote in the first place, you have to do an e-KYC with your IC biometrics and also your phone number. So what if people decided that they wouldn't vote because the result was already preordained? Even if they voted, they wouldn't make a difference. Or maybe they abstained because they felt that there was something very seriously wrong with this process. Is it out of the realm of speculation to imagine that maybe there was a situation, right, where members would choose not to vote because they feel that if you vote out of line, then you will kena kecam by the party leadership, and then as a result, you lose your chances of being promoted as an election candidate or anything else. Look, you might think that the PKR elections are a family matter.
We wanted your comments on the PKR elections between Nurul Izzah and Rafizi. Rafizi is saying there's infighting and it might cost votes in 2016. So you wanted your comments on that?
It is not a national issue. It's a family issue. So I don't want to comment on that.
But actually, They are important. Like, this is not the days of Reformasi where this was hanging out in dingy alleys to campaign for Anwar Ibrahim anymore. Like, this is the multicultural party of the entire country. The glue that basically keeps all of the unity government together. You can say that it's an internal election matter, right? But the fact is that this is very, very important for the entire country because it's the Prime Minister's party. And anything that affects the integrity of this result is going to reflect badly on the Madani government, which right now, whether we like it or not, is the Mama, Daddy and Nurul Izzah party. And not a good look given everything that's happened with the election so far that just make us as Malaysian people doubt the result. You know, once upon a time, like, I think most people would have accepted that yes, Nurul Izzah is a viable contender. She's not necessarily guilty of nepotism. It's the Putri Reformasi. She sacrificed so much for the party. But I think that just given everything that we've seen in this election so far, I think it's unavoidable to think about nepotism as being one of the factors that's actually involved in this whole display of what has happened and also the result.
Let's also remember that she was a PKR vice president before and that most of the nepotism accusations are coming from this election.
See, like, whether Madani realizes it or not, like, there are a lot of questions that people have right now about the whole election, and we can see that PKR is just kind of like trying to avoid these things, talk about how membina party kita unite again, akar umbi type of thing, right? But honestly, I think that if PKR thinks that he can escape all of these things, like, that is literally just wishful thinking. Because the fact is, right, that I've seen all over social media, people have been thinking about this, about how every single social media poll, right, showed Rafizi as the winner, about how now, for different reasons, they no longer trust PKR, support Rafizi, and cannot stand the thought of nepotism, to the point that they're even willing to support PAS itself. I never thought I would see the day. I think it is in PKR's interest to look at the questions that I just asked there and to address them fully and completely. Like, if you actually want a chance of winning the next general election, then the easiest way that you can do it is by addressing the fears, the suspicions, and the questions raised by people like me and other people who are actually willing to go out there and then ask these simple questions. Look, it's not like I want to ask these questions, by the way, but like, they are the very natural things that come out when you actually look at the numbers, right? And you choose not to just accept everything that you hear straight away without questioning it at all. PKR needs to realize, right, that like, there are very valid reasons for people to go out there and ask about the results. Because seriously, like, they are sus. The sooner it realizes that, the sooner that PKR realizes the natural dynamics of human nature when it comes to talking about things like these, the sooner it will realize that if it doesn't take care of the situation, things will very quickly get out of control, and before you know it, it's going to be 2027, the election will come, and they are going to lose. By the way, YB Rafizi, considering the way that you've been more or less screwed over by this thing, and considering that you actually deal with this data thing for a living, I'm in no doubt that you have already found out some of the things that I've already found here, have thought of them more than I have. But seriously, whatever course or pathway it is that you go through at the moment, I hope that you can actually be redeemed. Because like, this kind of thing and the problems that you've been facing right now are not problems that we wish on anybody out there. I'm sorry for the 27 years of Reformasi that you went through only to end up dealing with this kind of nonsense here. And I hope that somehow or another, the party that you used to believe in is going to wake up its ideal one day and then potentially, if not hold another election, then do something else. Now, none of this is an accusation that what PKR did is manipulate the elections, but it is an indication, and it's me telling you that the people of Malaysia are suspicious right now of what has actually happened. They think that Rafizi got robbed, and they feel that you went against the Reformasi that you promised as you went out and said to all of us that you would bring down corruption, you would create a better life for all Malaysians, and all those other things out there. But we see that your promises have not been delivered. We see that one of your best friends is somebody that you're not treating as one of your best friends in the first place. We've seen through not just Azmin, but also Khalid Ibrahim, and now, as it seems, Rafizi. You know, all in all, YB Rafizi, I think that many of us are out there and on your side at the moment. I hope that you can solve things with PKR, or if it's going to be with your own party, then that it'll be with your own party. By the way, I hope that everything goes well. I look forward to seeing you in public service or in any other aspect of entrepreneurial life at some later point in the future. Thank you for contributing to Malaysia. That podcast invitation is still open, and if you can do it, I would love to speak with you. Alright, and that's all I have to say about that, and bye.